Without further ado, if you will join me in welcoming Margo Kane.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, all my relations. It's fabulous to be here where the sun is shining. I just came from Vancouver yesterday. It's become my home. I was just telling Uli last night that I'm born on the edge of Edmonton with Jasper Place, a small town that was annexed to Edmonton sometime in the 50s, late 50s, 60s probably now. And I grew up in a small town on the edge of a larger city. I grew up at a time in the 50s when no one locked their doors, and we left the house early in the morning and we didn't return until we had to, till we were hungry, or our mothers called us to come in and stay close to the house while it was getting dark. I grew up at a time when we didn't have TV. We went to the neighbors for TV. Eventually, we had a TV. I grew up at a time when Walt Disney on Sunday nights, Bonanza, those were special shows that we were allowed to watch. And all the time that we spent as growing up as children was spent inventing our own lives outside in play, exploring the creeks and bushes and ravines and fields, and disappearing into the countryside until we had to come back. I would say that as I grow older, that this is one of the most precious times of my life. It was a time when I was uninhibited, a time when I could run away from the cares of the world, my parents' demands, the school, whatever else. It was a time when I could actually explore and be an explorer in the world, and seek out pathways and places that intrigued me or that I wondered about. I had no fear at that time of getting lost. I had no fear of anything, really. Not like today, where I'm sure parents, we all know parents are much more concerned about safety in their children and where they are and how they can keep them healthy and whole. So I have to say that my earliest times were really very nurturing for me, and I didn't really realize that until I was much older. One of the wonderful things about my life was that actually I was an eldest child. So I had younger brothers and sisters who became my captive audience. And I can't tell you the number of times my brothers and sisters asked me to sing that song again as we did dishes. Sing that song again. Tell us that story again. So from a very early age, I was already myself, fully expressing myself as a storyteller, as a singer, as a comedian, as a clown, as a babysitter, as a producer of events to entertain my captive audience. When I was thinking about the incredible history of Aboriginal performance in this country, I thought, oh, I can't go all academic. I'm not an academic. Though I have to say that my own journey is really, through my own journey, I've actually seen the development of all kinds of Aboriginal performance of all kinds in all manner of different ways and different places. So as a young person, I was influenced very much by, of course, the conventional forms of entertainment, that whole colonial lens of, singing and dancing and acting, the triple threat, the TV movies of musical theater, the comedians of Red Skelton and all those wonderful comedians on television, the Ed Sullivan Show, all of that. I was influenced by all of that. So by the time I was 11, I formed my own dance company, and we were 7 girls, of course, and we called ourselves the 7 Up. We danced for the school dances and the sock hops and everything, and we went on the television for the CFRN noon show. It was a live broadcast in Edmonton, and we danced our 2 or 3 dances that we choreographed to contemporary songs, the Beatles, and Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. I recall, and we made our own costumes, and so I was, making my debut onto the stage, various kinds of little stages. So it was. I say this because it's really was a very natural journey for me. It was very natural that I expressed myself. I was amusing to my parents, but mostly amusing to my brothers and sisters and my peers, and of course my favorite aunties and people who really encouraged us a lot. I think that when I was about 13, I started to teach dance with a girlfriend. We started to teach children creative movement. It's one of my fondest memories, and I'm just I've got this secret wish that I'm sort of got on the back burner to go back and teach children again, because it's one of the most enjoyable times of my life as we explored movement and dance together. So that will be something that I'll be kind of pursuing in the next few years. From dance and movement, there was always, of course, those people who encouraged us, not only our maybe family or friends, but my teachers. So I have a very strong connection to education and teachers, because they were the ones that actually, they saw the talent that I had and they encouraged that. So it was the grade 2 teacher putting me on the piano bench to help lead the class in song, and put me on the stage to sing the song for the school assembly. It was the leader who asked me to plan the teen dance in the community league and where we lived, and I like, where did these people come from? I was always surprised by the things that I was invited to do. It was the high school senior who came across the dance floor and asked me to dance, and I had no idea who this person was, because I had a natural gift. I had natural gifts in this area, and people saw it, and they encouraged it, and they welcomed me and encouraged me to take up these different roles that maybe I wouldn't have taken on myself. High school, drama class, kind of found a little family there. Fellow actors and same age as me and the grade above, we were combined in one class together. And, I say this because I really wasn't aware of what gifts that I had. It was other people that saw that and encouraged that. So when I think of the role I play now in life, it's very much informed by that welcome and that. So in those early days after high school, of course, it was a time of searching. I didn't really want to go on to university. I didn't want to study anymore. I had done a certain amount of theatrical work in high school, from musicals to theater. It's when I discovered that I actually was an actor. I was kind of surprised by it. I sang with a big band. I had lots of opportunity to do some, very mainstream kind of things. But leaving high school, came the whole identity crisis around what is it that is I want to pursue? What path is it that I'm going to take? It didn't include university. It included wandering around for a while, trying to fit into the world, and discovering that I couldn't hold down a job. I couldn't do a regular working kind of job. I actually had to really think about what was meaningful to me. What was life worth living for? What was it I could do that would really make life worth living? So I tell you this personal part of my life in order to lead up to the fact that really pursuing the arts, pursuing in whatever fashion, was my lifeline. It was a way for me to find myself, to feel myself fully expressing who I was. It was a way for me to find direction. It was a way for me to seek a path that only I could walk. That I needed to feel that I had a place in the world that was important and valued, and that's something that I could really commit my whole self to. And I really needed that. I really felt very adrift for a while. Some of that has to do with the fact that I was an Aboriginal child who had been separated from her family, and my family kept coming back into my adopted family to connect to me, and it was very challenging. I was always moving between worlds for a long, long time, and I think that kind of ability to kind of blend into both and many various communities made for a bit of schizophrenia in some ways, but it also seemed to be something that I was able to do through time. I think that, when I watched, when I started as a young actor, and there was not very much work there was no Aboriginal theatre, really. The Ecstasy of Rita Joe had been produced in Vancouver with non-native actors. I was still in high school, I think. I was maybe in junior high school, I think. There was no work of any kind of that expressed anything about Indigenous people at all in this country, and it became something that I really became concerned about. So even though I became a dancer, I became an actor, I was a choreographer, I was a teacher, I was learning how to choreograph musicals, and I was in a contemporary dance company. Nothing ever was about me and my people and my people's story, and this concerned me more and more. And it became really apparent. There was TV, there became all those various TV series, everything from The Beachcombers to Spirit Bay. That was a bit better because that was all Aboriginal people. Danger Bay, which was another series out of Vancouver, with little, you get a little cameo here and there. So there was a bit of TV of the week. I think I did a TV of the week with CBC out of Toronto. Moving into film and TV, it was still someone else's was in charge of the story. Somebody else was in charge of the production. And while there were some Aboriginal consultants or some writers occasionally, as time went on, I became very disenchanted with the whole business of being an actor in that realm. I'd seen Res Sisters. I was still out west. I went into Toronto occasionally. I had worked in Vancouver with a small summer project called Spirit Song. I know that within a couple of years of that work, with Spirit Song, there was a growing group of people around that project. I found a space for them, and then I was invited to be part of a national project that was funded through Health Canada. And there were two teams that went out. One came to Saskatchewan and one was in Northern Ontario. I was in Northern Ontario. And for about 2 months, we were in different Native communities. There was representatives who could talk health issues, you know, young mothers circles and various things like that. There was people that were involved in sports. And I, along with Joy Keeper, we did theater and mask and drama, dance, whatever. And we would go into various communities and we'd work with the community, animate the community. And by the Friday, the community and us would put on a feast. And at that feast, there would be various kinds of events and entertainment. And the community youth or whoever we'd worked with would be part of that event. And then there would be the surprise sometimes as the cooks would come all dressed from the kitchen, all clowning out into the audience and back into the kitchen. And there would be various things that would happen in the community that were total surprises and really bringing that whole community to life for that week. And, you know, 5 days isn't very long, but there was an incredible amount of energy that was released at that time. It was an incredible experience for me because I felt that the work, I could see what happened to the community when the arts and when theater and when full expression was engaged. And that is really what kept me going for a very long time. I became a member of the National Native Role Model Program, and I traveled many communities across the country and connected with various cultural communities through youth conferences, through graduation ceremonies, through cultural camps, and met all kinds of different children and youth and adults and all kinds of people that were working to bring health and well-being and through activities into each community. It was the 80s, and it was very much a time when there was a sense that even our cultural stories and teachings needed to be revived or remembered or encouraged, and people kept coming together. And I was part of that movement. It was an incredible time for me because I had chosen to leave the theatrical community for a time, not finding very much solace there. But the community work was really the active work that really kept me moving, kept me considering how do the arts really inspire and bring about a change in our people and in the communities that we're working in. At the same time, you know, Native Earth was established, you know, just around that, before and after that time. Ondanoque out of Montreal. There was also a number of community projects that I became aware of later, you know, through reading and through meeting various people. Eventually, you know, all these companies, artists were starting to bubble up. Theater, TV and film were happening in this country. The artist-run center movement, I only became aware of probably in the late 80s. When I started to, I had a piece, I had a work that I used to tour that I developed out while I was out in the communities. And I would do that site-specific work. I'd transform it, I'd perform it at I remember I was in, up in kind of Williams Lake area, Alkali Lake, in that area, working with community, and I created the work on the land there. Then when I moved it to a workshop or a conference in Lethbridge, SCANA was together at that time, the Society of Native they're visual artists, visual artists, Scana. I recreated the performance outside and added elements from that community into the piece. So something for me was creating work, performance work, site-specific work in various communities and pulling from that community some of the creative pieces. And I enjoyed that work, but it was very, always was this pull back into the city, and how do you document that work? And is it a play? And can you put it on a stage? And then you have to sell tickets, and you have to have a poster, and you have to do all of those things. And who's going to help you do that? Because you're one person. So where was the community of people to make that happen? So I would have to say that for a long time, as the kind of the child of exploration, and the person who would wander out into the world and see what was going on, I was always alone. And so I would come back and I want to do something, but there was nobody there. There was no Indigenous people also doing that work. They were in Toronto, and I went to Toronto for a short time, and Thompson invited me to take a new work I was developing called Moon Lodge, that then I took over as a director the following summer, and we developed it was with students, a summer student project, created a performance out of the story of their lives. And so I began to work in scripts, developing story from the people in the room. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the fact that they became so empowered. As troubled as those youth might have been, they became so empowered and excited, and their families were thrilled to see them and hear their story. They were funny, they were tragic, they were caring, they were concerned about really important issues, these young people. And I felt that this was the place that I really could spend my time. I could spend a lot of time working with people, because when I finished working with them, they were so bright and shiny and filled with hope and self-esteem. And to me, that was worth everything. Acknowledgement by others, that encouragement by others. And that incredible sense that I grew to become who I was, partially because of my own volition, but also because of the communities around me and the people in those communities who were willing and interested in encouraging the people in their, younger people in their community. The work that I do now is a combination of all of those things. It's a combination of my own interest in telling stories that are meaningful, sharing ideas about how can full artistic expression make us well? How can we encourage the various voices in our community to be heard dramatically in every kind of artistic expression? How can we be part of the expression, full expression of our indigeneity in all its forms? And how can all of that expression heal our people, heal our communities, encourage and express the beauty and wonder of the dreams and visions that our people carry? How can all of that inform this whole country of the magnificence of our history in this land, on this land? My work with Full Circle First Nations was really a way for me to be in charge of my own and our own artistic expression. It was a way for us to be self-determined, to govern ourselves artistically, to say, I'm in charge of what I'm doing. I'm going to produce this. I'm not going to wait for the non-native theatrical community or the non-native artistic community to accept us, understand us. It was a way for us to say, we are going to do this. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We are going to create a place where we can create our own work on the stages or in film or video or whatever it is that we want to do. We are going to take charge of that. And they produced the first production, the first professional production of that. That show had been done as a storytelling. I never wrote anything down. I'm not much for I'm not much for sitting at a computer or sitting and writing anything. I'm much more on my feet kind of person. So that was quite a challenge for me to actually take that storytelling and actually write it down. Actually find a way to take the story that I told and put it into something that could live on the page or that could be staged at another time by someone else. But I found that that work really helped me clarify the story, helped me, I toured it like 10 or 12 years. It was a way for me to actually keep the story alive as an actor, as a performer. It was a way for me to see the world. It was a way for me to keep working on my artistic craft, my acting skills. It was a way for me to learn how to express myself in a variety of formats. I mean, I sometimes had a small studio stage theater space, but other times I had, I was performing in a house in Melbourne in Australia, in a house that La Mama Theatre had turned into their theatre and office space, an old house. Sometimes I was in the Williams Lakes Community Hall on a little stage, and I had, I had no lighting or nothing, but I had a cassette recorder, and when it was time for the powwow, I pushed the cassette, and the little kids come dancing out of the audience onto the stage with me. It was a very exciting time. It wasn't always in a theatrical venue, and it was very much part of what I really enjoyed about working that way, working with a piece that you can just carry by yourself, or eventually there was only two of us touring that work. And I found that that kind of work, as much as our own people appreciated that work, there were still very few theatres in Canada that actually accepted that work as part of their season. I was often, and it was a solo performance. It was in the second stage, in a smaller studio space. But there were a couple of places and a couple of festivals that invited that work to tour to their venue as well. At the same time, probably around the same time, there were a handful of women actors that were developing their own solo work. So solo work kind of started to blossom as well. Monique Mojica and Shirley Chichu, and then eventually, as time went on, Marie Clements had some solo work. It was kind of a way to start creating work, is from that solo expression of storytelling. So I went away from the theatre for a while, working in the communities, learning and being immersed in a variety of Aboriginal settings where I was learning as well. And I began to get a sense of what my people were concerned with across the country. And I began to understand more and more that we were, what the similarities were, what the differences were, and that there was an incredible amount of work to be done, but there was also an incredible amount of possibility. It was very exciting to get to know so many, and I met any number of you. I met you, along the way, in various ways. So I enjoy visiting the world, but I needed to be back in my own territories. So at a certain point, Moon Lodge was my ticket to the world of theatrical expression that was outside of my own little world. And so I always went to a lot of different festivals to see different kinds of work, different kinds of work that came from Europe, that came from the States, that came from Britain, that came from, Canadian mainstream kind of work. But always, my concern was always about our own voice. And how do we express that? And in what forms do we express that? Do we just take on the colonial forms that have been offered us? I mean, some of them are quite fun to work in. I love musical theater, but that's not the way that I'm going to express my voice. I enjoy mysteries, and I enjoy the fun of a mystery dinner theater kind of thing, expression. But I'm not going to express that myself in my own voice. What is my voice? And so I was always very concerned about, okay, well, who am I? What is my Indigenous voice? I can take on all these roles because I'm an actor. I could try these different forms, but they're not exactly what I want to do. There's an intuition, there's an expression that is of myself that I need to discover and I need to find. And so just like when I said I was a child just exploring the world around me, the natural world around me, I too have been on this journey of trying to find a way to express this yearning to say who I am in the manner, in a creative way, in a way that is not bound by a form that I somehow have to be judged and curated because I write a play a certain way or because I do a certain kind of form. I'm very much free-spirited in that way. I want to find that different way to express myself. And so I felt the same with the young people that I worked with. They needed to, first of all, they needed to express themselves. They needed to say who they were and be who they were, and if it meant that they were tap dancing along the way to get to where they needed to go, so be it. Like, just to encourage whatever and nurture whatever creative expression that you had for them at that moment. For them to find themselves was their journey, but for me it was to offer them the opportunity to just express fully who they were. I think that as I said when I was left high school and I didn't know which direction to go, and I thought I didn't want to be an actor because actors starved, apparently. And but you can tell I'm not starving, actually. That was a myth. One of the things that concerned me was that I reached a point, and there was a lot of identity issues that I had to deal with, that I felt that I didn't really have anything to live for. And I questioned my willingness to keep living. And I was a young person fraught with all kinds of identity issues and challenges. And so along the way, I've met many young people who have also feel this incredible sense of schizophrenia, or a sense of not belonging and not fitting in and not having a place and not being valued. And for me, I think that my own journey of coming through that place, making certain choices and endeavoring to find my connections, find my place, find my voice, that is a journey that really serves me well when I work with my communities, because they themselves are we're still working with young people who are still having those issues. I see that the work of the Indigenous creators in theater and performance in Canada, it's very prolific. I mean, my goodness, I've been visiting with artists in the States, and they do not have the history that we have here. It's quite remarkable, actually. I've been around for a while, and I still remember Glenn saying, well, we started doing the work with Indigenous artists, and we thought everybody would join in, but they didn't. They seem to be in Vancouver, they seem to be them and the Pit Gallery, which was where Ahasu was. We met him, and we started working with those centers in order to create new work. And so a lot of the work, some of the early work in those artist-run centers were because I wanted a place to explore form. I didn't want to have to do a well-written play. I wanted to just do a performance, and I wanted to explore what that what I was trying to say. And I found that the Artist Run Center movement very helpful for that, to a point. I created the company, 92 is when I created the company. And really what I wanted to do was gather people together, to train together, to work on our craft together. I didn't know exactly what that looked like, but I was really into really physical-based work. I'm a dancer, a mover, I like to move. And so our earliest work, we worked with a variety of different kinds of theater practitioners, some in very physical-based work, different kinds of work. Eventually, Floyd Fable came to work with us. We had some people, he had got some training in Grotowski. There were a number of other people in Vancouver that had worked with Grotowski, or other people who had worked in some of this physical-based work, so we started to work together that way. That was the early years of my company. From that work, other artists, we worked with a lot of artists who then developed their own work. And so Full Circle has been a place where a lot of different artists have come to work on very small projects or large projects, and then they've gone on to form their own companies. So there's, I think there's probably in the history of performance, there's been a whole range of theatrical work that's been developed. There's certain companies that have managed to have a space, like we still don't have a space. We rent theaters, but there are a handful of companies that were really supported by those early years of the Canada Council initiatives for Aboriginal inclusion into the funding agency, and so there were lots of different programs and artists and projects that sprung up for a while there in the 90s, and we've lost some of those people or those companies. But some of them have remained, and the artists have gone back into and joined different organizations, or gone back to school, or, you know, we know they're still there. Different organizational things have happened. We still have Native Earth. We still have Sask Native Theatre again. Ondanok is still happening in Montreal. We have Gwandak in the Yukon. We have more and more non-Native theater companies and artistic directors are wanting to include Aboriginal work on their stages, though, you know, there's challenges to some of that, you know. We still work and endeavor to create opportunities for all our artists. So Full Circle started a cabaret in 2000, which was the Talking Stick Cabaret, and developed into the Talking Stick Festival. A way for us to give a stage and an audience for any Aboriginal artistic expression that wanted to be on that stage. We have limitations, of course, you know, funding. We live in BC, oh my God. City of Vancouver, terrible for funding. However, we've survived, so we're 23 years now. The Talking Stick Festival is 15, going into its 15th season. And on that stage is the opportunity for anything from a play, theater for young audiences, spoken word artists, music, dance, lots of dance, and a variety of community kind of projects, stage readings. And we try and provide that stage for anyone across Canada or anyone within our community to have a voice, to express themselves. I would say that there's still lots of work to be done. But I think the exciting part of what we're doing is that we are giving a space for the voice of Aboriginal artistic creation, exploration. And that, to me, is crucial, so that those voices can get stronger and stronger, and that we actually find that those people, we have lots of community partners, so those people, we're trying to bring more and more of our own community right into the theatrical experience, so that can inspire them, encourage new voices to come forward, and for me, that is one of the main purposes of the work that I do. That the expression that I find myself brought health and wellness to me. It brought hope. It helped me give me a reason to live. It gave me an incredible canvas to paint on. It opened me to other worlds, other Indigenous peoples. I toured Australia and New Zealand and various places. We're starting to connect with the international Indigenous community. And that's opened up an incredible world for me. And therefore, it's opened up an incredible world for the communities and the communities that I work with. It means that artistic expression takes their rightful place in that circle of our tribal leadership, where the arts need to play an important role in the balance and the well-being of our communities. That through the full expression of who you are, artistically, creatively, that wellness can find its place, that we can find a way to not silence each other or not be silenced any longer, that we can actually start to feel the blood flow. The energy can move and balance can be restored. And so for me, my personal journey is that when I look at my colleagues across Canada, whether they're working in the visual arts, whether they're working in dance, whether they're working in theatre, whether they're working in performance art, film, TV, whatever it is, that we all are contributing to the voicing of our needs and our full expression as Aboriginal people. And that is crucial to the balance that we need to have in our communities. We need to bring more of our people into our work and find ways to do that so that they too can become inspired by that and find some health and joy and hope for the future. I say we've got lots going on here. We've still got more to go. This university, when I was invited here and I saw the program and I saw how many artistic events you're having, how many conversations you're having, I was very impressed. There's some really wonderful things that's happening in this province, and you're part of that. And I'm very encouraged by that, and I think you should be too. Hello.
Thanks for your talk, Margo.
Okay.
I guess I just want to pick up on kind of where you closed and just to maybe wring a little bit more out of you. But I'm wondering about the challenges of leadership in these groups and the challenges of bringing young people, or for that matter, any people forward as performers into the kind of work that you're doing. I mean, if you will, the resistance to our imitation of mainstream existing orders, which, elevate some and, in fact, ignore others. And, in fact, the challenge of bringing forward those that are, for some of us that work in community, the Oxford Dictionary used to call, when I first read the word Indigenous in the Oxford Dictionary, the definition was poor and indolent. I was shocked, and I couldn't find myself there at all. That is what it was. It isn't that now, so it's changed. But what about the poor and indolent in our work? And how do we behave in a way that's resistant to creating stars and not seeing the real ones?
Well, I think you have to model that kind of behavior. If you want that behavior, then you have to model that behavior. So, I name Full Circle after certain teachings and being with certain people in that movement, as I said, in the 80s, where we were bringing awareness into various communities, teachings, education and fun, and we brought these things into communities, and the teachers were there, and I took the name from the sense, those teachings that talk about all of us being equal on that circle, that there's no hierarchy on that circle, that each perspective on that circle is as valid and as valuable as the next. So using that metaphor, then we really try and build that into the way that we work, and we try and model that behavior so that all of the people that work with us understand and know that they're valued. We've created in Canada. It's quite remarkable, the number of Aboriginal artists, actors, visual artists, performance artists. It's quite marvelous. That even though we sometimes feel that we're kind of disconnected, or that we don't have our own theaters or spaces yet, you know, we're still working on some of these things. We still have an incredible connection with each other. There's a lot of work that has been done, and lots more to come. When I came back into the city after doing all that community work, and I'd created, I started working on Moon Lodge, I also realized that there was a whole artist-run center movement that actually, in Vancouver, there was a handful of them, but the one that stuck out was the Grunt Gallery had begun to work with Indigenous artists. And so it became almost a place for any number of us who had been in the theater or had been on the edges of the theater community. We started to create work in the artist-run center movements. That artist-run center movement, that I don't even actually know the date off the top of my head when the artist-run center movement started. For me, you know, I would say if you want to look at the list of all the plays that have been developed, for instance, just in theater, you need just look at. Well, there was a study that Marie Clements did for the DeSato program at Canada Council that lists all these works that have been developed. There's a whole list of them. Then the study this year that was a co-pro with the NAC, the National Arts Centre, and Debodja-Majig out of Manitoulin Island, Yvette Nolan and Sarah Stanley and Debodj and various people helped to bring together a number of actors and youth actors and other actors, playwrights, playwrights dropping in. Daniel David Movises was there, and Kevin Loring came in, and we'd read scenes from some plays. Some days we'd read a full play. You can get a list. We had an incredible list of all the body of work of Aboriginal plays and that kind of work that have been developed since the 80s. I'm sure this. That list. I keep finding more things that were kind of left off that list. It's because we haven't really gathered all that information in one place as yet, but it's coming along now. And it's important. It was important for me as a young actor to go into Toronto and work with people, but I also eventually found my own way back. I needed to be in the West. I needed, for whatever reason, reasons that I think I know why, maybe now, I was pulled back to the territory that I grew up in. I'm very much, I liked it in the West. To have more people, staffing is challenged, We have managed through, 23 years, we've managed to find a handful of people that we all strive to bring that balance within the way that we work. And so we're developing, good ways of working together. And so when we bring people into that circle, or we go out to do a youth workshop, we're really about encouraging all those people because they're all valuable and they all have value to offer. It's not the same. They all don't have the same gifts to offer, but they have value, and we try and encourage that. So, really, in our organization is really trying to maintain those teachings, no matter whatever the structure we're doing. So we produce an event, then we're making sure that we're all concerned that all the people are valued and they're heard, and they know that we respect them in the way that we treat them and the way that we talk and the way if we're working with say we were working with a non-native person who came new to our organization, and it became really clear really quickly that their way of working was not conducive to, that kind of circle kind of mentality. So you become aware of that. And so some of my younger people said, oh, I think we need to, I have some ideas about how we can, make sure that that person understands this is how we need to do this. So next time, so we're always learning, we're always teaching each other, we're always reminding each other, oh, does this work? Is this how we do it? We have to model that behavior, and we have to learn how to do that ourselves as well. So yes, we have people that are really in the show, in the festival. We have people that, yes, have lots more, what do you call it? Star power or whatever. Yes, we have that. Of course we do. But we also make sure that we encourage and we invite the audience to respect everyone who's done this incredible work. So we always talk it up. That's part of our job as leadership, to make sure that the teachings that we're learning, that we're passing them on. And I think some of that is for some of us who didn't grow up with those traditional teachers, or we're learning as we go along, and we need to pass on that information as we learn. That's part of our job as we grow, is we have responsibilities to pass on the things we've learned that are going to help our people and help our community to be better at what we're doing, to try and emulate that incredible metaphor of the circle that surrounds the medicine wheel that surrounds the sacred tree at the center of it. It's like we need to find ways to put that metaphor into action and model that behavior and teach it and learn and still learn, know that we don't have all the answers. We're always learning. I learned this much, then maybe I learn a little bit more next year, So it's modeling that behavior, I think. Yeah, you're welcome.
So thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to see everyone here this morning. My name is Risa Payant. I'm the Executive Director of Commonweal Community Arts. Commonweal Community Arts is pleased to support Performing Turtle Island, and specifically to sponsor the keynote that you just heard. We'd like to thank the Multicultural Council of Saskatchewan for their generous funding support, and also many thanks to Margo Kane for being here and sharing your history and the history of Indigenous performance. So if you can all join me in thanking her.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful speech.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.